Nau mai, haere mai, and welcome to you all joining us this morning. It's a lovely sunny morning out here. So today we're looking at how to keep our tamariki safe around driveways. In particular, highlighting the importance of checking for little ones before starting the car and when we're driving in areas where children might be, such as driveways and footpaths. Here with us today from the Safe Kids team, we have myself, Moses and Susie. Safe Kids Aotearoa is the injury prevention service of Starship Children's Health, dedicated to reducing unintentional, preventable injuries to tamariki aged 0 to 14 years old in Aotearoa, New Zealand. For those of you who haven't already connected with us on social media, you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and the Safe Kids Aotearoa website. It's been really great to see so many of you have been attending our webinars so far. It really feels like it's helping to create our sort of web hui whānau. So welcome back, and welcome to those who are joining us for the first time. All right, so today we're going to be looking at some of these sort of key areas. So in the Auckland region, 1 in 4 child pedestrian accidents is a driveway run over. Today we're going to be focusing in particular on those under 5s, as they are at the biggest risk for unintentional preventable injuries resulting from driveway runovers. We're also going to look at some of the dangers of driveways, priorities for action, our key messages, and top injury prevention tips. So New Zealand's rate of child injuries is actually really poor when compared to our international peers. New Zealand was ranked the lowest of 24 OECD nations in child and adolescent deaths by accidents in a 2007 UNICEF report. And in 2009, we scored just 33 out of 60 in terms of child injury prevention. So given the severity of injuries and the high mortality rates associated with driveway runover accidents, primary prevention really is the most effective approach to this issue. All right, so we're going to look at some national data shortly. And as we go through the webinar today, I really want to emphasize that when we're talking about injuries in the webinar today, we're using the definition of an injury that results in at least 24 hours in hospital or a fatality. The injuries sustained in driveway runover incidents are usually severe and often involve significant trauma to the head, chest, and lower limbs. These injuries usually require hospitalization or even intensive care, and they can result in permanent disabilities and death, not to mention psychological trauma for the child and their whānau. So looking at all unintentional injuries, our data illustrates that these result in 140 hospitalizations per week and 1 death per week in Aotearoa. These hospitalizations and deaths can be reduced if we're more aware of the risks and prevention strategies to keep our tamariki safe. Now, the term unintentional preventable injuries is a bit of a mouthful, but what it really does highlight is that what we often might call accidents are in fact often preventable, even if they are unintentional. Okay, so just looking at a graphic representation of the demand on the health sector caused by injuries and violence. Now, many international studies suggest that community incidents, which is represented in the yellow, purple, and grey below the blue line, is much higher than hospital admissions. So, but the data categories that Safe Kids Aotearoa focuses on, and the data that we're sharing with you today, those are the fatal injuries as represented at the top of the pyramid in the teal sort of light blue colour, and injuries resulting in hospitalizations as represented in the pink. We know that 60% of hospitalizations occur in a home environment. And this makes sense as we spend a lot of time in the home, especially as a child. And here the home definition includes the garden and the driveway. Unintentional preventable injuries are the 3rd leading cause of death from unintentional injuries in New Zealand, with medical issues being number 1 and sudden unexplained death in infancy, also known as SUDI, being the 2nd highest. Research suggests that there is a socio-economic gradient to unintentional tamariki injuries, meaning that with more poverty and financial hardship comes more risk. One Auckland-based study looked at household size and found that the average number of children living in the household where a child driveway runover injury had occurred was 3.4 children, which is significantly higher than the average for the total Auckland region, which is 2.5 children. So yeah, we know that children from economically disadvantaged backgrounds are consistently identified as experiencing a greater incidence of vehicle-related pedestrian injury and mortality. We also see that Māori and Pacific populations are more at risk for tamariki unintentional injuries. So here we can look at a bit more depth at ethnicity factors and what this looks like on a rates per 100,000 basis. So data illustrates that Māori are significantly more affected by unintentional injuries than anyone else in Aotearoa, with a mortality rate 3.5 times that of non-Māori tamariki in the same age group. Pacific Island non-fatal injury rates are also very high. Tamariki Māori have non-fatal injury rates 1.5 times the rate of Pākehā children and twice the rate of children with Asian heritage. Now, highlighting these disparities is useful as it helps us to know where to channel support and resources, and also challenge us to ask sort of why these disparities might occur. For example, to factor in structural and systemic discrimination, and to emphasize the importance of culturally appropriate health interventions. So the data is pretty clear for this one. For tamariki aged 0 to 14 years, injuries are happening at home more than in any other environment, as you can see in the far left column. And of these tamariki home injuries, more than half are aged under 4 years old, as you can see in the dark blue section of that far left column, representing ages 0 to 4 years. Ages 5 to 6 are represented in the light blue teal colour, and ages 10 to 14 are shown in the yellow. So the home is where we're seeing the most child injuries happen. So we know that we need to be just that extra bit more mindful with our tamariki when they are with us at home. We're going to play a video now looking at the importance of being mindful around driveways. So we're gonna, sort of think now about some of those definitions for what a driveway runover is. So a driveway runover injury, remembering that here we're talking about serious injuries that lead to hospitalizations or fatalities, involves a moving vehicle and occurs on a driveway. The definition of a driveway can be quite broad. For the purpose of this webinar, we've expanded the definition of a driveway runover injury to include the following: garage, carport, shed, garden, tennis court, lawn, and the front or back of house. In other words, sealed or unsealed driveways. Now, figures on driveway accidents are only approximate because New Zealand lacks a formal system for recording data, for this data in particular. This lack of specific information actually prompted the Child and Youth Mortality Review Committee to conduct a study into slow-moving vehicle deaths. And our data analyst, Mo, who's with us today, and will be answering questions at the end of the webinar, is part of that committee. So New Zealand sources of information that are relevant to driveway injuries include general practitioners and private accident and emergency services, hospitals, coronial information, police reports, and ACC. So here we're looking at all home injury data that resulted in the death of a young child in Aotearoa, New Zealand, from our most recent data set. Coronial information takes 4 years to become available, so this is the most up-to-date data that we have access to. Now, from 2011 to 2015, 188 children aged 0 to 14 years of age died as a result of an unintentional injury at home. And 90% of the injuries that resulted in these deaths were tamariki aged 4 years and under. In the lighter blue sort of teal section, we can see that of those 188 deaths, 19 of the fatalities in the home were from driveway runover injuries. And all of those fatalities related to driveway runovers were tamariki aged 4 years and under. So we're going to look shortly at some of the developmental reasons that these younger tamariki and pepe are more at risk for these serious injuries. Okay, this table here reflects the hospitalizations injury data relating to driveway runovers for children aged 0 to 14 years. So there's a strong relationship between driveway injuries and age, with children injured in this way being most frequently between the ages of 0 to 4. And our pepe aged 1 and 2 years are at the most risk for this type of injury. Children who are younger tend to be injured more severely and have a higher death rate. These common injuries include brain damage, limb fractures, and abdomen and chest injuries. About 11% of tamariki who survive driveway runovers are left with a permanent disability. So yeah, for this reason, it's really important to focus on prevention, not treatment. Okay, here we're looking at in a bit more depth at some of the developmental reasons that our pepe are most often sort of at risk for sustaining a serious injury. These 26 hospitalizations of 1-year-olds were specifically for injuries sustained by a driveway runover. So yeah, like little scientists, tamariki test and experiment, finding out what happens when they do something and whether it happens every time. Toddlers are able to make a plan and carry it out to achieve something, for example, like dragging a chair so they can climb on it and reach something up high. And we really want our tamariki to be able to explore their world in all its messy, exciting glory, and for them to be able to do this in an environment which is as safe from the risk of serious harm as possible. Now, these 19 hospitalizations of 2-year-olds were also specifically for injuries sustained by a driveway runover. 2-year-olds are also developing fast, with their decision-making skills and physical ability increasing rapidly. However, they're still not really old enough to understand consequences and potential dangers, making active supervision so important for toddlers. Toddlers are also still so physically small in stature that they can be easy to miss if they're sitting, playing, crawling, or walking behind or in front of a car. These little ones don't have the ability to comprehend these dangers, so it's up to us as caretakers and guardians of our tamariki to do what we can to keep them out of harm's way. So the statistics illustrate that there is almost always a close relationship between the driver and the child when a driveway runover occurs, and that it is crucial to always be on the lookout for tamariki on driveways and footpaths, as you never know where they might be. It's heartbreaking to see that with nearly half of driveway runovers, the driver's appearance of that child. It can be really easy to assume that tamariki are right where we left them 2 minutes ago, but it's so important to always sort of check that not only are your own tamariki out of harm's way before starting your car, but also that there are no other tamariki around who you might not have considered. For example, neighbours' kids or children walking, scooting, or biking past. Now, here's some really interesting research suggesting that more driveway runovers occur in spring and summertime, which does make sense as generally the warmer months see more children playing outside. Research also suggests that just before lunch and dinner are the most likely times of day for driveway runovers to occur. This timing factor is interesting. Just before dinner can be associated with tamariki playing outside after school, and with the fact that often people will be coming home after work. However, what about lunchtimes? We'd love to hear in the chat some reasons that you think lunchtime is one of the most likely times of day that a child would sustain a driveway runover injury. Another really important thing to sort of bear in mind is that camera-based systems have been described as one tool that could be further explored to reduce injuries, but they are of limited use. Camera performance changes from vehicle to vehicle, depending on sort of rain, fog, and other environmental conditions, which can severely reduce visibility on the screen. Another really important reason why cameras or sensors may not be so useful is that they might not pick up children who are close to the car because the camera or sensor often only looks out, not down. So a small child sitting below the bumper level of the car would likely not be detected. And we know from the data that these little ones are the most likely to sustain a driveway runover. Another important factor is that often only newer or more expensive car models have sensors or cameras, and we know that tamariki living in lower socioeconomic families are more at risk for sustaining serious injuries. Relying on sensors and cameras as a key preventative factor for driveway runovers could serve to increase economic inequities and leave out those who are at the highest risk. So it's important to be really mindful of the fact that small tamariki may not be visible if they are playing or sitting behind a vehicle. That's that human factor. With vehicle design, as we've just discussed, even cars with sensors and cameras have blind spots. And with the built environment, another factor for longer driveways is the tendency to pick up speed. So this is dangerous if you have a shared driveway in particular, as you may not be able to stop in time if a child is playing on the driveway or runs out onto the drive. And it also makes it more dangerous for tamariki who may be crossing the footpath at the end of your driveway. Okay, so here are some really sort of important key tips to bear in mind. So one is before you get in, always walk around the car and check for children. Number two, if you're able to, separate play areas from driveways with fencing or gates, if that is something that's possible for you. 3, supervise children whenever cars are moving. That's so important. And number 4 is just to slow down on driveways and when coming out of the driveway onto the road. Okay, so just some sort of key points here in terms of the statistics that we have that we sort of want to highlight is that 75% of hospitalizations from driveway runovers were sustained by tamariki ages between 0 to 2 years. Half of all drivers who hit a child in a driveway runover are the child's parents. After parents, it's most likely that a child will be hit by a visitor, relative, or neighbour. And while the highest percentage of driveway runovers occur while reversing, it's really important to be mindful when moving the car in any direction. So just note is that these yellow stickers that know where the kids are, they're available to order for free actually on the Safe Kids Aotearoa website. However, they are only available in packs of 50. So you might want to have plans of who you're going to share them with before you order a pack. We also have an interactive driveway runover awareness kit, which is free to borrow and is available in most regions. But please do note that as we move to level 2, it may be some time before online orders are able to be sent out. Just another note here is that if you do rent or know someone who rents a kāinga ora home, often referred to as Housing New Zealand, it might be useful for you to know that they do actually offer a driveway safety program. So whānau who have tamariki under 5 may be eligible for this program. And what it does is it offers installations to make the property safer. For example, replacing easily opened gate latches with secure child-resistant latches in order to provide more secure separation between play areas and driveways, and also speed bumps to help remind drivers to slow down. So if you do live in a kāinga ora home and you want to find out more, you can get in touch with your tenancy manager.
Great, thank you, Shyla. So now it's Q&A time, and I'd like to introduce Moses Alatini, who is our injury prevention analyst, to help answer some of your questions today. Malo Moses.
Oh.
So we do have one question. The question is, if I don't have a reverse camera, are there any products that could improve visibility when reversing?
Yeah, really good question. I wouldn't know too much in terms of products. That might be a question for Mo, but just, yeah, in terms of things that we can do if we don't have access to that technology, just those key points of just walking around the vehicle before you do, start the car, just to make sure that, that there isn't any, there aren't any little ones hidden away.
Yeah, thanks, Charlotte. I totally agree. The best advice is to walk around and ensure that there's no kids around the car, and to make sure that somebody's supervising the children, especially if you're in a household with got young kids, or you're visiting family or friends with a large gathering, and there's a lot of kids there. In New Zealand, we have a huge variability in our car fleet, and technology is great, but not everyone has the latest technology in terms of cameras and sensors. So until we get that in our car fleet, the best advice is to walk around the car before getting in and ensuring that somebody's supervising the kids.
So thank you, Mo and Shyla. To our viewers, if you have any more questions, please comment on our Facebook or Instagram page, or simply send us an email and we will answer those for you. Shyla, is there anything else that you'd like to mention?
Yeah, I'd just like to note that we do have 2 more tamariki home safety webinars coming up soon, and we'd really love to have you join us for sort of more tips on how to keep our little ones safe in the home. So we've got one on keeping our little ones safe or preventing choking and strangulation, so those kind of prevention strategies, and sharing some of the data that we do have on that, and then also burns prevention.
Thank you. And Mo, is there anything else you'd like to mention?
Yeah, if anyone wants any more information around child driveway runovers in terms of the research, we have a position paper on our website. It's freely downloadable.